Hey everybody, Pastor Jason here. I am beginning my 6th installment in these video journals as I am underway in developing an exhaustive biblical theology of fear. So I am reading every verse in the Bible that has to do with the subject of fear in some way, and I am reading them in context and doing a little bit of word study on them and making sure I understand the verse and then moving on to the next one. There's over 500 of these references in the Bible that have to do with fear in some way. And I am nearing the 1/3 mark. I'm about 165 verses or so through the project. So I've done a lot of videos and not a whole lot of more reading. If you've been following along with these, there's enough meat that I've uncovered recently that I'm kind of pausing here and doing a little digesting. So about 1/3 of the way through the project, this is my 3rd video addressing the subject of the fear of the Lord. So if you have not watched the first 5 videos, I would encourage you to pause and go back on the playlist and watch the first 5 videos. They're all about 10 minutes long each, and they really do build on each other as I am experiencing the Bible in this subject going forward. So, 3rd installment on the fear of the Lord. I teased this last time at the end of video number 5. I said that if you feared things other than God, that you were an idolater. And I said I'm going to have to develop that. So here I am developing that. In the series of verses that I have read thus far, about 167 or so verses into this project, 7 times so far, God has said something like, do not fear the other gods, or do not fear the gods of the people, or do not fear any other god, or something of that nature. Now, we know that there is only one God, that we don't worship the greatest God among other options. Allah is no God. Krishna is no God. Any other, Baal or Astarte or Jupiter or whatever other god you might have heard of. These are fictions. They do not exist. And so to say that we are to fear the Lord and serve him only, and we are not to fear other gods, at first sounds like there are other things out there that we might choose to give obedience to and to allow them to overwhelm our lives and give them power to force us to obey. These other gods are no God. And yet, God tells us not to fear them. Well, you could say, well, we don't fear them because they don't exist. But think about that a little bit more. There are people who fear these fictions, who worship no gods. And God says, the one and only true God says, no, worship me. Don't fear and obey and worship these other things. And it's very clearly stated in 1 Chronicles chapter 16. Pause the video real quick, grab a Bible, open it to 1 Chronicles 16, and then resume when you're ready. Okay, go. 1 Chronicles 16, verse 23 and following. It says, sing to the Lord, all the earth. Tell of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations and his marvelous works among the peoples. For great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. Here's the interesting phrase. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the people are worthless idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before him. Strength and joy are in his place. And then it goes on to exalt the attributes and the love of God. Now, notice what it said. Verse 26, all the gods of the people are worthless idols. They are no God. This God does not exist. But it says in the verse before that God is to be feared above all gods. both of these verses are true in their totality, and so we have to hold them both in our head and try to believe them both in our hearts. One of them says there's no other God but God of the Bible, and the other verse says don't worship these other gods. Here's where I think I land on that interesting tension. Gods that are no gods become a god to us when we fear them. So the wonderful people in the Hindu religion who are doing the best they can to keep at bay a huge population of gods from running rampant with their lives, and they are sacrificing and praying and doing what they can to appease this constellation of millions of deities. These deities don't exist. If they stood up from these numerous altars and shrines and walked away from them and never came back, their lives would be no different. These gods don't exist. However, when they kneel before these statues and light their candles and sacrifice their animals and pray to these beings, even though there is nothing behind the idol, there is something going on in their heart. They're worshiping a vacuum, but they're worshiping. They are making obedience towards nothing, but they are making obedience. And so while there is no God in that statue, there is a God worship thing going on inside of them. And remember from the last video, God is jealous of his unique position to be the object of your fear and reverence and worship. So even though people who worship idols today worship the air, they worship nothing, they're violating the command of God to worship him alone. And they are transgressing by instilling on the throne of their heart this statue to nothing where God should be. Now, you and I probably don't struggle with that. I don't know the last time you bowed down and lit a candle before a statue of a monkey or something like that. Like, that just doesn't happen much in our culture. And certainly probably the people that are searching for this video probably aren't bowing down to statues of things, right? The last time you sacrificed a chicken to an elephant made of stone is probably on the 4th of February. So you might think, oh, it's fine with me. I'm not in jeopardy here. This doesn't violate God's command, in my life. However, realize that what these idolaters are worshiping is nothing. The problem is not that there's this thing. The problem is what's going on in their heart. Now let me turn it towards Western society, where very few people bow down to statues of things. And let me ask you, what are you afraid of? What is it that compels you to act in ways that are perhaps contrary to your nature and drives you to do these and commands your obedience, if those things that drive you and command your obedience are not the God described in this Bible, then you are just as much at fault as the person who sacrifices a chicken to a statue of a cow. Because while there is nothing that you're actually worshiping, there is worship happening in your heart. And so you are an idolater if anything else sits on the throne of your heart, even if that thing is not a thing. Are you driven out of fear that you're going to not have enough money? And so you work like a crazy person, and you save every penny, and you don't give to the Lord's work, and you are miserly and Scrooge-like with your resources because you're terrified that you might not have enough. Money, though it is not a god, is on the throne of your heart, and you are an idolater. Are you terrified of your family falling apart to the point where you overprotect and overshelter and overguide your children, and they have no independent responsibilities, they have no opportunities to fail, they have no danger that they ever have to encounter, because you are acting out of fear of their jeopardy, so much so that while there is no God called your child sits on the throne of your heart, and you are an idolater? Are you mortified by the way the election came out, and you are doing everything you can to build these walls in your life to insulate yourself from the political fallout of what you're afraid of, and you've got a bomb shelter and a 72-day dry food supply and a stash of AR-15s, and you're going to make it? There is no such thing as the God of prepping, but you are terrified of the future and your political environment, and you're an idolater. Anything that sits on the throne of your heart, even if it is not a thing, if it is not Yahweh, you are an idolater. And so 7 times very clearly thus far, God has said, don't fear other gods. This passage says that and then follows it up by saying, yeah, and those gods are not a thing. Still don't fear them. Because only God, only this God, only the God of the Bible is worthy of your fear. There's a lot there to take inventory of, probably. And I'm delighted to walk this road with you as God is filtering my heart as well. God bless you. Fear the Lord and nothing else.